Today's episode is a prime example of looking for a needle in a haystack. Here is what is coming up on the Conservationists Assemble. Come with us on this story of rediscovery as we spotlight a species that went from possibly millions of individuals to less than 40 in the space of a decade. And hear how the determination and resilience of some amazing people has turned the tables for the Lord Howe Island stick insect when the odds were stacked against them. Welcome to the Conservationists Assemble, a podcast that seeks to unite with Earth's mightiest conservation heroes, raising the profile of our planet's threatened species and putting the spotlight on the fantastic in situ and ex situ conservation efforts taking place around the world, highlighting the link between them, as well as asking those important questions of what more can and needs to be done. Whether you're experienced in species survival or new to animal advocacy, this is the podcast for you. Will you join the fight? I am your host, Johnny Bloxon, and I am inviting you to join the ranks of the Conservationists Assemble community as we take the fight to extinction. This episode is all about the Lord Howe Island stick insect, and today I'm teaming up with Kate Pearce and Rowan Cleve from Melbourne Zoo, Australia, a team and zoological collection really and truly on the front lines of the conservation of this species. ...780 kilometres off the east coast of New South Wales, Australia, 3,600 acres in size, lies Lord Howe Island. But believe it or not, our story of rediscovery for the Lord Howe Island stick insect does not actually begin on Lord Howe Island, but 20 kilometres southeast of the island is Ball's Pyramid. Formed from volcanic activity 6.4 million years ago, 1,100 metres long, 300 metres wide and 570 metres tall, making it the tallest volcanic stack in the world. This is where our story of rediscovery begins. And who better to have this conversation with than Kate and Rowan? Welcome to the Conservationists Assemble. Thank you for joining me. How are you both today?
Wonderful. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, great. Great to be here. Thank you.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I'm glad you're both doing well. And yeah, this is an incredible story of rediscovery and just some amazing efforts to save a really endangered species. So before we get into talking about the Lord Howe Island stick insect, could you both just introduce yourself in a bit more detail, what role you hold, who you are, and where you work?
Yes. Hello, my name is Kate Pearce. I am the Life Science Manager of Invertebrates, Birds and Killer. So a bit of a mixed bag, and I'm here at Melbourne Zoo. Very fortunate to work here. And I oversee, three different departments that's really, really varied with lots of conservation programs. I'm incredibly lucky.
And my name is Rowan Cleve. I'm the Lord Howe Island Stick Insect Specialist here at Melbourne Zoo, Australia. I am very fortunate to have come onto the team way back in 2003, just when we received the first pair. So it's been an exciting journey and a long journey. And it's great to be a part of.
Yeah, we're definitely going to unpack it all today. But I can see in the 10 minutes that we've been speaking that this certainly means a lot to you both, and that is what conservation's all about. Is how people and humans are people and animals are obviously working alongside together to coexist, and we're certainly going to unpack all of that. But yeah, it's interesting that you've almost transcended along with this project, Rowan.
I have. I came onto the team after a bit of an accident, and it was a bit of a downer, but to be honest, it's been extremely positive all the way through ever since. So for me, saving this species has been a life's work, I suppose. That's something that I think is extremely important. Conservation, saving our critically endangered species. And this is one that I've had the opportunity to work with right from the start, and with such amazing teams of people, not only here, on site at Melbourne Zoo, working with our veterinarians, our horticulturalists, our assets teams, that, if you ask them to do something, they know how important it is. They know how important this species is and the work that we're doing. When we first started the program, very little was known about the species at all. So Patrick Honan, who started the program here with a small team of 4 of us, he kind of worked his nights learning as much as he could about the species. And from there, yeah, we just learnt, and every decision, even to this day, every decision is made with a lot of thought behind it. We've got great support now from around the world with our international partners, the Island Board and things like that. So it's a world recognised conservation breeding program. And yeah, as I've mentioned, that's something that Kate and I in particular have worked many, many years very closely together. And it really is a lot about the people that you experience the journey with as well. And the teams of people that we've had here coming through were just, yeah, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. And actually veterinarians are something that I do want to discuss a bit later on, specifically with this project. It was actually Lee Morgan, the ERZ EP, who put me in both of your directions as to having this conversation. After he said, obviously, the kind of European population's just a stronghold. Um, and also, I suppose we want to talk about the kind of people that will get on a boat to go to Bull's Pyramid in the first place. Um, were we definitely sure that there was an existing population on Bull's Pyramid, or was it just kind of sheer luck that they happened to find them?
So going right back to the start, I guess, they were prolific on Lord Howe itself. There were thousands, probably millions of them, we don't know. They were so numerous they were used as fishing bait. And then in 1918, a ship ran aground and rats got onto the island and basically ate the lot within a decade or so.
Yep.
And then there started to be rumours in the 1960s that there were these big black insects on Ball's Pyramid. Ball's Pyramid is about 23 k's from Lord Howe Island itself, and Lord Howe is about 600 k's from New South Wales, Australia. So it was a really popular rock stack. It's incredible. Like, I mean, I'd seen photos of it, but until you go there, you
Yeah.
just can't imagine how incredible this place looks. And we're both fortunate enough to yeah, and it was very popular with climbing. So people were going on there, seeing these insects and coming back and talking. Then around the early 1980s, the Lord Howe Island and the island surrounding it World Heritage listed area. So that then meant that people couldn't climb Ball's Pyramid anymore. So there were a lot of climbers out there that were saying, oh, but there's these insects out there and we really need to see if they're still going. The government didn't always take that seriously, but finally in 2001, they sent a small team out there, and lo and behold, they were there on what we now call the Phasmid bush. It's a pretty amazing story. And when you're out there, there's lots of seabirds, which you can imagine, yeah, okay, there's seabirds living out here, but there's only tiny little pockets of vegetation and such a small amount of soil. There's hardly any soil on Ball's Pyramid. So it's a really precarious environment. And the fact that they survived out there on this Phasmid bush, we now know that they're in other spots on Ball's Pyramid as well, but it's just an incredible survival story.
Yeah, it is. And as Kate mentioned and yourself, is that I was lucky enough 2 visits ago, a couple of years ago now. I didn't think I'd ever get on a boat and get out there, but we actually had an opportunity to go out there for work every now and again. And it's a very, very busy trip, but I got on a boat, and I'm not the best on boats, but it is phenomenal. It is majestic, and you have no idea of the size of it until you actually just cruise around it. And Kate, you were lucky enough to actually be on it as well, which is a huge achievement because very few people do get the opportunity.
Yeah. So in 2003, we got 2 pairs here at Melbourne Zoo. One pair here at Melbourne Zoo and another pair went to a private breeder in Sydney. But then in 2017, we were part of an expedition to Ball's Pyramid, and I was lucky enough to be on that. And I got to sleep on Ball's Pyramid on this little hut at the bottom in like one of those hiking tents. It's an incredible experience, and that's when we collected Vanessa. She's very, very close to my heart.
Yeah. So since the start of the captive breeding program, there has only been 5 individuals sort of collected from Ball's pyramid. So, very, very small gene pool regarding that as well. So, but I am happy to report today, because I haven't told anyone this yet, that our 6th generation females from Vanessa just laid their first eggs today. So we'll have little green nymphs in probably about 6 to 7 months now, which will mean the 7th generation from them. From the original pair, we named Adam and Eve. Back in 2003, we're about our 19th generation into the captive breeding program here at Melbourne Zoo alone.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, so when I've obviously been doing some reading up prior to this conversation. So it was estimated that there was between 9 and 35 individuals remaining on Ball's Pyramid. And quite sadly, the pair that went to Sydney didn't survive long after. And actually, Eve, now that I know her name, she had to undergo veterinary treatment, right? And this is what I said about wanting to talk about the vets. So for a species that we know zero about, talk to me about the kind of vet that's like, yeah, I'm gonna come and help out and assist in this.
Amazing one.
Yeah, and she is a bit, well, when we talk about heroes, Dr. Helen McCracken, who was the head vet at the time, yeah, she was ringing, Patrick, we were in conversation with her. Eve became very, very ill, was actually upside down with her legs twitching, which is never a good sign in an invertebrate. And worldwide searches and contacts and the rest, and eventually a little concoction was made of ground Melaleuca howeana leaves, which is their favourite, and they found feeding on Ball's Pyramid. That plant is also well around on Lord Howe Island, the coastal areas as well. A little bit of glucose and a few other things, and an eyedropper was placed on her mouth parts, and she actually fed, and within 2 hours she turned around and was around walking and searching again, and that saved the program without doubt, with that knowledge and that dedication that everyone has with this program. I must admit, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, working on these sorts of programs, you really need key people, and we have that. We're very, very lucky in this. We've had it at Bristol Zoo, who were partners for a very, very long time. We're now London Zoo, San Diego, Prague Zoo, Lord Howe Island Board, Melbourne Museum. These are institutions and organisations that we partner with very, very closely, and there are key people on those sites that have this passion and drive to find answers. And if you don't, you're always trying to be better. The next day, you're always trying to be better than the day before, and you're always searching for answers. For me personally, the animal comes first, above anything else. And you have to rally. You have to, there are highs and there are lows. When the first nymph hatched from an egg on Threatened Species Day back in 2003, that was just phenomenal, because we didn't know what it was going to look like, for example, and there was this little green nymph come out of an egg, and the adults are jet black and huge. So there's this amazing transformation in their life as well. So yeah, it's been a great journey, and there is a really famous X-ray taken of Eve. Your listeners would be able to Google that, or you could find it as well. And it was taken here at Melbourne Zoo, and if you're looking at the abdomen as well, there's, you can clearly see 6 eggs inside her. So once she recovered, she went on to lay nearly 300 eggs in her lifetime. And that was the start of the breeding program, pretty much. So we were very lucky, but we had dedicated, people that really wanted to see this through, and we knew we had pretty much one opportunity.
Should also add that we did get some offspring from that pair in Sydney as well. So we often talk about it just being two founders at the start, but there was a little bit more genetics that came in a bit later on.
Yeah, it was a couple of years down and that really benefited us as well. Because once we introduced those animals to our collection, things really started to take off. And it does take, for us, it took probably 3 to 4 years to really, sort a lot of things out. They're not an easy species, and things can go wrong extremely quickly. And this is where, again, it comes down to facility. We have brilliant facilities here, purpose-built, many of them now for this species. And I keep coming back to the staffing. You need great staff that, will put themselves on the line to save a critically endangered invertebrate, which is, when you think about it, really beautiful for a human to have that connection. And for me, it's all about the next generation. So, yeah, it's really important, the work that everyone is doing in the conservation field.
We're also really lucky just here at Melbourne Zoo in general, because not a lot of zoos in Australia prioritise invertebrates. And here we've got 6 glass houses that are just for Lord Howe Island stick insects. Like that, it's just incredible. The real estate that's given for this insect, we're really, really proud of that.
Yeah, and we also considered to house this species simply because of the reputation that we had going back into the 80s. And we're coming up to the 40th anniversary of our beautiful butterfly house, which is one of the most amazing places to be in. You're surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of butterflies flying around, and the horticulture, the plants in there is just a beautiful space. So that also helped, with the decision for us becoming involved in this program. And yeah, as Kate mentioned, invertebrate conservation, we were in there, and we've been going hard ever since.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I suppose, obviously, not only the kind of the genetics and the founders was something that you maybe had concerns about at the beginning, but were you aware of what life stage that the founders come in at, or obviously, and I suppose you weren't really aware of the entire life cycle / lifespan of one of these individuals, so there was the time pressures there as well.
Absolutely. It was really, really stressful those first few years because we didn't know anything about them much. We had to get a license to get just a plant, an agreement with the Lord Howe Island Board so that we could get the plant that we knew that they would feed on. And that's how we started. It was every step was taken with a lot of consideration, small steps, then led on to something else and led on to something else. We knew that they were adult. As I mentioned earlier, we didn't know that, the incubation time, 6 to 9 months. We know that through all the research that we do here. We take very meticulous notes on all sorts of things. Everything's entered into ZIMs. And, we've developed the skills over that journey as well. We evolve as the program has evolved.
And just, talking about 6 to 9 months, is that common? Because that to me seems like a very long time for an invertebrate. And you naturally assume something more of a mammal to have a kind of a gestation period of 6 to 9 months. So is that common for such invertebrates to have an incubation period that long?
Probably more so for maybe a temperate species, but for this species, they're subtropical, almost tropical. So yeah, it is quite long for that. Normally tropical species are quite short. A phasmid stick insect, like a Queensland species like spiny stick insects, leaf insects, I think you call them Nico. And Goliaths, they would be 3 to 4 months, 3 generally. Even phylliums, the leaf insects, are about 3 to 4 months. So yeah, it is quite long. And we've played around with seasonality, but we tend to find that it's much better if we keep it the same temperature year round.
Yep.
Lord Howe doesn't get that hot and it also doesn't get that cold. So it's around 20 to 25, 26 year round, getting down to about 14 in winter. They are starting to get a little bit more extreme weather. I mean, over 26.
Yeah.
For Australia, it's, you know, it's not that warm. Here in Melbourne, we can have 42 degrees. So having it 20 to 26 and then 80% humidity, that's really been the key to keeping them going. And if we do try and play around with seasonality, we haven't had as much success.
Yeah.
And that's a hard temperature and humidity bracket, I suppose, to keep, because you can end up with problems with bacteria and mold, and you need to have really good ventilation. And a lot of institutions that do invertebrates do tend to do tropical invertebrates, so they're used to going to kind of higher temperatures. So they can be a real challenge just based on the temperature.
Yeah. Yeah. And early on, as I mentioned, we didn't play around too much with a lot of things, but one of the things that was really interesting was trying to work out an incubation medium, for example. Like, and we early on we didn't experiment or research too much, but anything from leaving eggs out and not buried in something. So we give the adult females when they mature into adulthood at about 6 months, sand is introduced just in some sort of container, because they will bury their eggs. So early on, what we started to do was try lots of different medium to bury the eggs in, and vermiculite by far was the most successful. So we tried sand, leaf litter, different things like that. Vermiculite now is our go-to. Again, early on, we were measuring and burying the eggs at a specific depth underneath the vermiculite, which we still do. We misspray at certain times of the year as well, those eggs, just to keep them at a certain moisture content. There's lots of research, there's thousands and thousands of eggs that even to this day are measured length, width and weight. And then, we get a nymph hatch that's 3 times the length of the egg, which is really cool. Again, you can Google that, and there is a really great hatching video that I took for myself. That was me. I have a mammal background, so getting into invertebrates, I really needed to work out my own connection with them. So I just kind of volunteered my time at night to come in and watch them, because if you don't understand a species, it's really hard to look after them. So early on, I'd just come in and at night and just sit in there and watch what they were doing as well. All the information was written down, as I mentioned. Any of us on the rounds on the days that we're looking after them, even to this day, it's noted if there's something different or something observed. We're always learning, and that's the beautiful thing about these programs, is that you never stop learning, and no 2 days are the same. You come in one day, you do something a little bit different and it works, and that's awesome. And we all benefit from that as well. And we are always on call as well, 24 hours a day. We're on call if something goes wrong, and we're on call to all our international partners or anyone involved in the program that they can email, and we try and get a response back if they hit a problem or something like that. It's a really cool program to be involved in.
I just wanted to pick up on what Rowan said there. We must be up to, what, 26,000 nymphs or something like that that's been hatched in the program, and every single one has been measured.
Yep.
Every single one. The data set is just ginormous.
Yeah. Do a lot of data entry.
Rowan Zim's entry, he's normally got the highest Melbourne Zoo. Be interesting to see where he ranks in the world, but it's pretty high.
It's good, and that was also for me and how we started. It was that Zim's wasn't in practice at the start. Obviously, we had record keeping books and arcs and different things throughout Australasia that we follow in our zookeeping careers here. And when Zims came in, it's pretty scary to start trying some data entry and things like that. But once you get the hang of it, it's just so useful. And we partner with different PhD students and researchers, and they access that data. They're writing programs to extract different data that they need out of it. And it's all beneficial to the program. We get so much information out of it. And I started it because I kind of wanted to make sure that there was a history written down, is that someone in the future, 50, 100, 200 years from now, would go, wow, okay, right, this was done, or this was tried, or, they learned this. And that's really cool. And we didn't know how we were going to go with the program at the start, but, a few years in, as I mentioned, we kind of cracked the code of keeping the species here. Every facility is different. Even here, everyone operates differently. So something that works here in Australia might be different in the UK or the USA, kind of thing, that everyone will have their own little intricacies with their facilities. And that's really critical as well. Knowing all that as well, and we mentioned earlier about our extremes. We go down to 0, -1, 2 degrees in winter, and we're at 40, 42 degrees in summer. And, both of those extremes are really difficult to work with this species. It can be very challenging.
Yeah, and keeping them in glass houses we've found has been much better, particularly for the plants. So we use potted plants. We're very fortunate. We have an amazing plant nursery here with 2 full-time staff members down there. So keeping them on potted plants has been much better. So the potted plants will stay in there for a week, but having them in a glass house means that they get sunlight and that they can, keep photosynthesizing, and we've got good nutrition then for the animals. But that does create a challenge in that you've got a glass house and it's 42 degrees.
Yeah.
And, we've got evaporative coolers and fans and vents and extraction. But at 42, I mean, we're really fighting the elements. So you'll see Rowan out there hosing the top of the glass houses, trying to keep them cool enough. But we are lucky that the 42s don't come every day.
No, they don't.
Sporadic.
And that's the thing we mentioned earlier about staffing, is that you just got to get in and do it. It doesn't matter if it's lunchtime, morning tea, or if you've got to go, you just do it. It's critical, and they're more important.
And talking about the diet, because you obviously mentioned at the beginning how you had to get permission almost to use the tea tree from Lord Howe Island. Have you found that they won't eat alternatives under human care, or is that something that they have been able to transition now in terms of the nutrition that's offered?
Yeah, absolutely. We've trialled probably somewhere at nearly 200 odd plant species. So what we did early on, we were using lots of different things. And again, we didn't start that process until the program had established where we could start branching out on different things. So a big focus was when, we wanted an international breeding program, was what could keepers in the UK get for this species year round, what could they get in the USA, things like that. So that was pretty cool. In 2017, Melbourne Zoo, we went totally endemic host plants off Lord Howe Island. So it takes, a long time to get that. And we have thousands of plants alone just for a single species again, which takes up a lot of real estate. But, we're rotating plants constantly. They do eat a little bit, not too much, but you do tend to go through plants on a regular basis. So we need lots of plants going for them. And, things like ficus we're able to grow on zoo grounds and have a dedicated little almost ficus nursery just for this species that only the Phasmid is allowed to use, though the keepers. So, yeah.
Okay. And when it comes to getting seed from Lord Howe Island, because it is a World Heritage Area, we do need to do that under licence. So we don't do that very often. But if we want to trial an endemic species that we can't get on the mainland, we would do that. But for the most part, we can get a similar subspecies that's found in New South Wales or Queensland. So at the start, they thought they were super, super fussy little stick insects because they didn't feed on the things that all the other stick insects feed on. They wouldn't take gum, they wouldn't take acacia, they wouldn't take bramble. I'm trying to think what we used to feed in the UK, bramble and hollyoak and things like that. They wouldn't really take that here, but as we found over the years, trialing just hundreds and hundreds of plants, they're not that fussy. They just like plants from Lord Howe Island.
Yep.
But again, we're quite lucky that our partners overseas have found different species over there that they've been able to bring them through on as well.
Yeah, and the other thing which has been really interesting and great working with the Lord Howe Island board and people out there is that they would come up with a request, have you tried this? Or, so we're now, for example, Muhlenbeckia complexa, which is, a rambling plant. This species absolutely loves the bark of that plant, which is really, really interesting. They can be quite messy eaters, and you come in the next morning and you've just got all these little chewed pieces of branches and leaves on the ground that you clean up. So we have very high husbandry standards here as well that we follow. So yeah, it's cool.
But I suppose by coming in and seeing kind of all of the twigs and leaves on the floor that they've discarded just shows you how important they will be for the ecosystem as and when a reintroduction plan on Lord Howe Island does take place.
Yes, we've been focusing on that quite a lot in recent years. How do they give back to the environment? So they would keep the foliage in check, if you like. So they are grazers. They don't eat a huge amount. We do have a species called a plague stick insect here in Australia, so that's quite unfortunate for our little phasmids because sometimes people think they do the same, but they really don't. They don't eat a lot at all. It was 2 hand-size leaves a week.
Wow.
Yeah, that they would eat per individual. So it's not a lot considering how big the stick insect is. So that's pretty amazing. But then the frass output. So frass is insect proof. And they do produce quite a bit of that. So they would be helping to fertilise the forest. And the frass output is actually quite different dependent on what they're feeding on. So on the ficus, they'll have quite big, moist frass. And then on, I think it was the Cryptocaria, the brown laurel, I think that one, it's more small, dry frass. So it's quite different depending on what they're feeding on at the time. We do find the adults really, really love the ficus.
Yep.
And then the nymphs prefer the tea tree, the melaleuca. Yep. And then onto the belogia. Belogia is bloodwood. So they can also vary as well throughout the life stages as to what their preferences are. The other thing is they're a food source. We love invertebrates and we don't want to think about them being eaten, but of course they do. So there's a lot of woodland birds out there. The Lord Howe Island golden whistler, silver eyes. They would happily eat the nymphs, probably not much bigger than a few centimetres.
Yeah, a couple of months in.
And then the Lord Howe Island woodhen, which is also an amazing species that's had unbelievable journey. They would also take some of the adults and the currawongs as well. There's a Lord Howe Island currawong. So we think there'll be a food source, there'll be fertilizers, and then they'll also be grazing on the forest.
Yeah. So part of the program here, if we're not doing research trials on a specific plant species, which we run that. If we're going to do it, we do it properly. We commit to a number of plants. And again, we kind of need 6 to 12 months to build into that as well. And that's with our wonderful plant nursery team, the guys getting the plants and nurturing them up to a point where I kind of think, or we think we've got enough ready to go, because you need to start from a newly emerged nymph straight out of an egg onto it. So we've done preference trials and also survival trials with a master's student many years ago now, which was really valuable research. And here, if we're not doing a research project, they have minimum of 2 host plants. So they have choice of which one they want to go to. And again, we know what the young ones like compared to the adults. So, and as sub-adults and adults, they have access to 5 to 6 different species that they can go to free range every night and choose what they want to eat.
They do tend to eat the flies.
They do.
In a pattern, they'll go ficus. So yeah, with the mule and Becker in there, and then the cryptocarp, like you can see the pattern as they go around. We call them free range glass houses.
Yeah.
They're about 5 meters by 3, and they have the choice to go wherever they want in these glass houses. They have little nest boxes in there and all their food, but you can see the pattern of feeding over the week.
And what's interesting too with that is that every week when we change the plants over, so there'd be a dedicated day for servicing, a complete service. The plants need changing, as Kate mentioned earlier as well. I set them up in different places all the time, so that's their little enrichment. Play with them. A lot of people think that you can't provide enrichment for invertebrates, but you certainly can.
Yes.
Yep. There's a lot of things that you can do really successfully. And it's fun. It's fun. So.
But you talked about cracking the code a bit earlier on, and so with again not originally knowing the lifespan for one of these species, walk us through the feeling of completing that first full life cycle under your care at Melbourne Zoo.
It's very emotional. Thinking about it, like doing this job for a very, very long time. Each nymph that emerges, I do everything I can, and we do everything as we can for them. And I mentioned earlier, it was really, really scary, particularly for myself, but I had 3 other colleagues that in total we had about 100 years. When you put all our careers together, it was nearly 100 years of zookeeping and invertebrate work. So it was always good to bounce things off people, not only here, but internationally as well. And just watching that develop from, as I mentioned, we didn't know what a nymph would look like. And then that process of growing, how long it would take, all that started to unravel. A big thing was getting our greenhouses at the right temperatures. So we started off mimicking climate on Lord Howe Island, obviously up and down a little bit, but as Kate mentioned, we found like a very standard temperature ranges, lows and highs that worked really, really well for the species. So, that's a priority for us and it helps.
Fantastic. And so, in terms of then looking forward, you've talked about how there are other species like the Lord Howe Island wood hen and how they're kind of almost sharing a similar story arc in the sense that they've now disappeared. And I believe it might be it's Taronga Zoo that's doing work with the Lord Howe wood hen. But there wasn't just the rats to blame, because it's easy for the rats to become a scapegoat and almost seen as the villains. But there's also actually invasive ants on the island that are, if I'm correct as well, that are threatening.
I mean, the rats have definitely played a very large part. So they did the rodent eradication out there. Gosh, it's hard to remember years with all COVID that was in there, but I think it started around 2019.
Yep,
2019. Yeah. Then it gets a bit mushy with COVID, but they did the rodent eradication, which is a really complex project to do. It's the largest inhabited island where that had been attempted. So they had to do a real mix of different methods, which meant that it could have failed. We're very lucky in that up to now, at the moment, there are no rodents on Lord Howe Island as far as they know. There are monitoring stations out there, tube cards, detector dogs, all that kind of thing, looking for rats and mice, but as far as we know, there are none out there. So with the wood hen, pre-rodent eradication, they caught them up every year, checked their bands, checked the numbers and health and all that kind of stuff, and they were getting around 250, and they thought that was carrying capacity. The last count they did, I think it was 1,750, and they stopped counting.
Yeah.
They were just like, there are so many. So in this case, it is one of the rare, I guess, one of the rare cases where there's one main threat process. But yes, there are big-headed ants, big-headed African ants out there as well, which definitely would cause a problem for invertebrates out there. There's also occasionally myrtle rust as well. So myrtle rust affects myrtaceous plants, and the tea trees fit into that group of species. So that could be a really, really big problem for the phasmid. Also on Ball's Pyramid, there's weeds, so morning glory. So the Lord Howe Island Board get out there every year and do some weeding on the original phasmid bush, which is easy. I'm going to say easy. It's not easy. I've climbed up there. It's quite, it is quite difficult, but they go up there easily to weed. But beyond that, it's quite difficult. They need to bring in climbers to be able to do that work. And again, the problem is that the morning glory smothers that melaleuca, which is one of the main holds for the phasmid, the stick insect. So if that plant can't grow, then there's nothing for those stick insects to feed on. So yeah, there are a few others, but definitely the rats were the really, really, really big one. Yep. The other fortunate thing is World Heritage Area. So they've got amazing, the park there is just phenomenal. We highly recommend visiting. It's just an absolutely astoundingly beautiful place. The hiking trails are just incredible, and the species of plants that you see out there and birds, and the forests are really waking up now post rodent eradication. Yeah. We used to go out years ago and you couldn't hear many woodland birds, and at night you couldn't hear any crickets, which is weird, you know, like you normally hear invertebrate sounds at night. Now we go and you're hearing that. You're hearing crickets, you're hearing birds everywhere. Just, yeah, it's a really big change.
The bird life has rebounded phenomenally in a couple of years. It's just, there were ticks everywhere last time I was out there, November last year. So, yeah, there's been a huge, and that's been beautiful to see for us as well, that the transformation pre and post. You know, we don't get out there very often, but when we do, we see really, really significant changes. And yeah, as Kate mentioned, even with the plant life, you know, there's just new growth absolutely going on everywhere. It's great.
And that's a huge credit to the Lord Howe Island community and the Lord Howe Island Board. It was such a lot of work for people to go through and have big changes as well. And the community just did an amazing, amazing job of getting through the rodent eradication and contributing to all the work. It's an incredible project.
I love the island, and it is an absolutely belter of a place to visit. It is so beautiful.
It's paradise.
It definitely is.
Yeah, let's just talk about that community significance, and so just for our listeners, now that the rodent eradication has been successful, Lord Howe Island was one of only a handful of islands of some 1,200 invasive eradication projects that are taking place globally. Lord Howe Island's now one of the only islands to be free of all invasive vertebrates, which is really impressive. 1,200 projects is a huge number.
It's really amazing. It can't be, we can't talk about it enough how amazing a job they did. It was the logistics of it, getting things there, all the infrastructure that they needed, people, like so many people. So on Lord Howe, they've got caps on the number of people that can live there, the number of seasonal people that can come in for the tourist season, and then there's a cap on tourists. So they needed to bring in people and find accommodation for all of these people. Like there's so many small kind of aspects to it that we don't think about on the mainland. So it was a really, really difficult job. And then when it came to birds, they assessed what birds could potentially be impacted by the baits. And Taronga Zoo did an amazing job in bringing, along with Lord Howe and Board and New South Wales government, bringing in the Lord Howe and currawongs and woodhens into captivity, and they looked after those to make sure that there was no secondary poisoning events with those birds. So it was just a huge, huge logistical job. And we were lucky. We managed to go out there and see it all in motion. And we did lots of, at the time they had conservation volunteers over the winter period. So we were doing talks for them and showing them the phasmids as well, and helping with replanting out on the island. There's another little island in the lagoon at the time that we were doing revegetation on. There was lots and lots of work happening and lots of really fun stuff as well.
And that's just because you mentioned at the beginning, Kate, that the communities on the island used the stick insects as fishing bait. Was there a kind of, how did they feel when the Lord Howe Island stick insect disappeared? And because there is quite a, they're referred to as the tree lobster or walking sausages
Yes.
by the local communities. So there's clearly some form of connection there.
Yeah,
So just talk us back.
that's really hard to quantify now, because there were two papers that were written that mentioned the stick insects pre-extinction on that island. One was in 1917 and there was another one in the late 1800s. And that was it really. Like, there wasn't a lot of information out there. They talked about them being found in wood hollows, and that when you open these wood hollows there were various sizes in there, and there were bushels of grass at the bottom. But other than that, there wasn't really a lot of information written down at the time about how people felt about these insects. Not everyone loves a big black leggy insect as well, so some people did think of them in not a favourable way. We do know that. But now they definitely identify them as part of the island.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You go to the shops, and that's my favourite part,
Yeah.
going to the shop. And the different shops all have different.
Yeah, I was going to mention that there's T-shirts, there's stubby holders, there's pins, badges, all sorts of things.
There's a beer.
And there is a love, that
Yeah,
sort of thing. Yeah, there is too, which is great.
amazing.
I think one of our proudest moments was actually taking them back in 2008 to the island, so the community could see this iconic species. And that was something that I think Zoos Victoria should be very, very proud of as well, being part of that journey. And we developed really great relationships with different entities out there, and they've held the species out there in a captive environment as well for many, many years. And that's a lot of that circles around community engagement. And yeah, it's something I think a lot of them are very, very proud of. When we go, we do talks at the school and at the museum and things like that, and it's just really well received. And I think more and more people visiting the island just have a real interest in the biodiversity of Lord Howe Island, and just talk about that and see that. The phasmid obviously is part of that journey now as well. There's a lot more knowledge out there about this particular species. As and Kate mentioned, the woodhen journey is just something that I'm in awe of as well. That journey when for a bird species to get that low in numbers, that is critical, and they turn that around. So hats off to everyone around the world working in with programs like that, because it's not easy work.
I just like to say Rowan's being a little bit modest there when he talks about the school, because Rowan has written a children's book called Phasmid, and when we go over, we always make sure that Rowan has a date with the school and reads the book to the kids. And for the 20th anniversary of the captive program a couple of years ago, we also took over some craft material as well, and they all made these little sculptures of insects, and they loved it. They loved hearing the story. They love Rowan. Oh my gosh, when we go out there, the kids just love Rowan. And they've all grown up with this story now. as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. It is for a lot of conservation work. It is about building connections.
Yeah.
And that's writing the book. Was that I was kind of 2 years in. I was a new dad myself, and one of my favourite things was going home and reading a bedtime story, and I wasn't seeing enough books that I was interested in with conservation stories, because they make great stories. Because how could this species, survive? How do they live? And the more knowledge we can pass on, the much better place this world is going to be. It's a shrinking world, and saving everything we can is really, really important.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the book, so Kate, thank you for doing that. And yeah, it just shows that this is very much a part of both of your journeys too. But yeah, in researching ready for our conversation, there's actually, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but there's a video on YouTube of a ranger in the Santa Monica Mountains Recreation Park reading your book. They do a series, yeah, they do a series, and I thought, well, just how incredible that this book on such an endemic species on the other side of the world has made its way to the west coast of America, and just, yeah, spreading the good word and using what you guys are doing and what's going on with the Lord Howe Island stick insect to educate on invertebrates globally, but also just how they're functioning in the west coast too.
Yeah, so I picked up a book by one of Australia's most famous children authors, Alison Lester, and she partnered with an artist, Coral Tulloch, who was also a really phenomenal author herself. And I picked it up and I just fell in love with the illustrations, and I'd been thinking about a book for a long time. And I just saw this come to life, this illustration. So I reached out, eventually, short story, partnered with CSRO Publishing in Australia, which is a science publisher, very highly regarded around the world as well. And we went from there, and it was their first children's book ever. We launched it at Melbourne Zoo. We had, some community from Lord Howe Island out, different people that had worked with the Phasmid at different times there as well. So that was really important. And it is about sharing this journey. It's their journey. It's all our journeys that are involved with this species. It's something that I think we can all, look back very fondly on in time.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we're lucky with this species because they have this amazing story and they are quite popular. We can legitimately say they're world famous now.
Yep.
A lot of invertebrates don't get that. They can generally be quite a hard sell. So yeah, hopefully they can pave the way for all the other invertebrates that need our help as well.
Absolutely. And it is the little things that matter.
Yeah.
That make all the difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've definitely covered the efforts and the plight of the Lord Howe Island stick insect very nicely, but also, highlighted that actually the future for them is looking quite positive at the moment. Obviously more work to be done, which hopefully we'll have updates on as and when those next steps in the journey for the Lord Howe stick insect take place. So Kate, Rowan, I think this is a suitable stopping point for part one of our conversation on the Lord Howe Island stick insect. We'll be picking up with part two of our conversation, and that is taking a look at some of the people behind the conservation efforts. So on Friday, we'll be hearing about both of your career journeys, aspirations, and generally just learning a little bit more about what makes you both tick. Sadly, that does bring this episode to an end. I have loved having you on this journey with me, and I hope you've enjoyed listening about the conservation efforts for the Lord Howe Island stick insect. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and share the podcast, and follow us on social media. And if you have any questions or comments on this episode, please message on Instagram or Facebook, or email us at conservationsassemble@outlook.com. If anyone has tried Phasmid Pale Ale that Rowan mentioned earlier on, brewed by the Lord Howe Island Brewing Company, and can recommend it, or better yet, If anyone is taking a trip to Lord Howe Island anytime soon and wants to supply your favourite conservation podcast host with a can and a stubby holder, I'm sure they would be grateful. That's all for this episode. Don't forget to listen on Friday and check out social media throughout the week to keep the conversation going, where I'll be sharing some photos and videos that complement the discussions in the episode this week. Thank you for listening. You've been amazing as always. Until next time, I have been your host, Johnny Bloxham, and you have been listening to the Conservationists Assemble.